Let's talk a little hoops. Nebraska basketball is kind of on a roll. So they won the college basketball crown. I was disappointed that they didn't have individual plastic crowns for all the players to wear. They just had a trophy with a basket on it. I really would have liked to see
like a Burger King, like
that version in a plastic replica that they let every player have an individual replica.
Robes, they could wear robes.
Right.
Yeah, a little scepter maybe. A lot of things they could do.
As it was, well, there was a throne. As it was kind of like the guys were like putting the trophy on their head, like the men's winner does at Wimbledon, where they put the trophy on their head. The women's winner at Wimbledon gets this really cool plate, and so they don't really put the plate on their head.
Wouldn't want to do that.
They kind of hold it out like a shield. It's awesome. Wimbledon has great trophies. Anyway, so guys were kind of putting it on their head like it was a crown, but I'm like, I really wish they had a plastic crown. They've since added a bunch of transfers.
4 to
he's
this
built.
point,
He's
yes.
building his roster. Who are these guys?
Price Sanford from Iowa.
Yeah.
Jamarcus Lawrence.
That's a good addition.
Old friend back from Rhode Island.
That's a good player right there. I like him.
Will Cooper, kind of a 3-and-D.
Son of World-Herald alum Todd Cooper.
That's right.
Congratulations
Air Force
to
guy.
Todd.
And I'm not gonna try to pronounce the other guy. Oogie apparently is how he can pronounce his name. He's a big. So
from
they're
Central Michigan.
From Central Michigan, right? So you've got the 4 ads. You've lost Gavin Griffiths. You've lost Nick Janowski, and of course, all your seniors and outgoing contributors. What's Nebraska still need? Well, I guess for what strikes you about what they've added, and what do they still need to do as they're sort of Amazon.coming the portal here?
I like what they've added. Price Sanford will be a shooter that Gavin Griffiths was not. Price has done it already. He's proven that he can do it. Griffiths did not prove it at Rutgers, and he was not able to break into the lineup here. So I think that's kind of like a 1-to-1, switch out. Sanford will take that role. And so I think he's going to play and, play good minutes and, be a wing option for them. I think he's a better three-point shooter than C.J. Wilcher, who was kind of that guy. I don't know if he's going to be as good of a shooter as Bryce Williams was this year, but I think Price Sanford's going to – he made 40% at the Big Ten level last year. You'd love to see that remain to be true.
Yeah.
And then you have him and Connor Essegian on the floor at the same time. You have 2 very, very good three-point shooters on the floor at the same time.
Yep.
And so I think that's one of the things to look at. And then Jamarcus Lawrence is nothing to shake a stick at. So he shot nearly 40% this year at Rhode Island. Rhode Island's not as good of a league as the Big Ten, but I've always liked his game. I thought he was a very good player at Nebraska, very intentional, knew his motivation, serious guy, not too much of a jokester, serious, tough. Was surprised that he left because I think he would have been the starting point guard. He left. They signed Raleigh Worcester. I don't think that went that well. And obviously he was banged up, but even still. So that's a good addition. And then the guy they named Oogie, the Central Michigan transfer, he's probably your replacement for Andrew Morgan.
Yeah.
And I think he's a little bit more offensively, what's the right word, diverse than Morgan. I don't know what he's going to be like defensively, but I think offensively he's got more diversity to his game, and he gets to the line more, and he can shoot a little bit more. So I think if you're talking Morgan to Oogie, I think it's a slight advantage to the guy from Central Michigan. If you're talking Lawrence to Worcester, it's advantage Lawrence. If you're talking Sanford to Griffiths, it's major advantage Sanford. And then Will Cooper, I think, is a guy that you're able to add to the team, and he can play D, he can score. He's gonna be a guy with elbows out and tough. He's a Lenzer guy. He's a Nate Lenzer kind of guy.
Yeah.
So you need a guy to go down and double the post, even though he's 6'6", 215, he'll do that. If you need a guy to go out and do this, he'll go do that. There's just a quality to his game that I think people are really going to appreciate. Now, I'm talking about what I saw when I saw him at Millard South. I didn't watch anything from Air Force where he was this year. He was a role player initially, but then as the season went on, his role grew and grew and grew. And I think this is a guy that comes back and he will just absolutely bust his tail for Nebraska, much like Cale Jacobson, who is staying.
Right.
So he says he's staying, and I think, again, who is he replacing? Well, he's kind of your replacement for Aaron Eulis, right? So, like, Eulis is graduating. Cale Jacobson will go into that role. Advantage probably Cale because he doesn't make mistakes, but he probably doesn't push the pace quite as much as Aaron. I don't know who. I mean, Will Cooper? I don't think he's a replacement for Nick Janowski. I don't.
No.
But he's on the roster. They got a little bigger, and Nick Janowski didn't play at all. So I don't even know how you compare Nick Janowski to a guy that actually played. But Nick's gone. That does continue a trend of Nebraska really not hitting on some of their freshman recruits. And this does go back a ways.
You've got a list.
I got a list. This goes back to the majority of the Hoiberg era. Now, again, we need to be clear. Fred Hoiberg is a brilliant guy. He is probably better with 400 level players who are transfers. Guys that really understand the game, that have physically developed, and can execute what he's asking for.
Yeah.
So his program is not necessarily attuned to true freshmen. Nevertheless, the true freshmen that he got his first year and we're talking scholarship-ish guys, Akola Rope, Kevin Cross, Samari Curtis, Ivan Udrago, and Charlie Easley. All 5 of those guys left before their eligibility was up, and Cross and Curtis left right away. Easley kind of did too, although I don't know. Maybe Easley was on the previous team. He might have been. Easley went to South Dakota State. Cross had a really good career at Tulane. Udrago went to a couple different schools, but one of them was Grand Canyon. The following year, you had Elijah Wood, not to be confused with...
Not Frodo.
Not Frodo. And Eduardo Andre. Andre was there for 2 years. Wood left right away. And he was like kind of a buddy of Trey and Bryce McGowan's or something. I never quite figured out. Anyway, he didn't play. And then the following year, you had Karan McPherson. He left right away, I think, after 1 year. Bryce McGowan's left, but he went to the NBA, so that one's different. Sam Hoiberg, still here.
Yeah.
Denham Dawson.
Right.
I think he was there for a year or two. And Wilhelm Breidenbach. And Oleg Kohene. So all of those guys that I mentioned, except for Sam Hoiberg, and we don't count Bryce McGowan's, left. Bryce went to the NBA, so that's a success story. The following year, Ramel Lloyd, redshirted and didn't play, kind of the Nick Janowski plan. Jamarcus Lawrence left, came back, and Cale Jacobson, not a. And Karan McPherson and Denham Dawson both redshirted, and then they eventually left. They didn't. They left after their second year in the program, so that's happened a few times. And then let's see, Eli Rice was there for 1 year. Okay. I thought he had potential. He left. Matar Diop left after one season, and they kind of liked him. They used him in the Big Ten tournament. And then Janowski this year. Frager redshirted, but he reclassified upward. In other words, he was like, I think, a 17-year-old true freshman. So it made sense for him to redshirt. I think they really like where he's going with his game. But I think part of what this shows is that sometimes when you recruit a lot of transfers, Evan, your freshmen have to fit in right away. Or they have to be a Sam Hoibergian, I'll do whatever you ask me to do, my dad's the coach kind of guy. Now, Sam Hoiberg is a key part of this program.
Oh, yeah. Ultimate glue
I
guy.
think I honestly don't think he's played enough. I think he could play more than he has, and I've always really liked his game. And so, you got to have a guy that's willing to do that, though, and Sam has reasons. He has incentives, including playing for his father and helping his dad get this thing where it needs to go. And so, if absent that, it can be hard to know exactly which freshman you're gonna hit on, and they've had some struggles there. Or I don't know if you want to call them struggles. The reality is they're recruiting the guys they're recruiting, and then they're going out and they're recruiting the transfer portal too. And I think Fred's just better suited in the portal. So Janowski leaves. They have one freshman coming in for next year, Quentin Rhymes. I think it's wise for them to sign only a couple, because the reality is they're not going to be a program that necessarily builds off of 4-year guys.
Yeah, no, totally.
That's just not what they do.
And the McGowan's thing's interesting. If he was coming up now, how different that recruitment would be in the NIL era. He was kind of that last group in before that was a real factor, and did sort of grassroots NIL stuff.
But I think he could have stayed 2 years.
That would have been interesting
if he was coming up now.
Well, one, would Nebraska have been able to sign him in the first place?
I think
But then two, yeah, maybe he stays another year because Nebraska can make it worth his while.
That's right. There's a financial incentive to it, and it would have been, hey, Bryce, come back for one more year, develop your game. You're going to make X amount of dollars.
Become a first-round pick.
You'll be a first-round pick instead of a borderline. Yeah, I think he would have stayed. In this era, I think Bryce would have stayed longer. I think he would have stayed at least 2.
If he would have gotten to Nebraska at all, though. That's my other thing. You think so? Maybe.
I do.
Maybe.
I do. I think they had relationships and they had built it. Now, there might have been a program that was able to go out and outspend Nebraska by an unusual amount of money, but I think Bryce really liked it here. I really do. Like, I think he's come back many times, and so that's probably a situation where they kind of got a tough deal, when you think about it. But again, I'm not trying to say that Nebraska's necessarily done a bad job of recruiting freshmen. I think the way they've recruited it is we're going to go after guys that have potential upside, and they're going to have to fit in a roster full of grown men. And a few have, and several have not, and they've gone on to do different things. I don't know if they had it over to do that they would have kept Kevin Cross. Kevin Cross was a really good player. He was a Doc Sadler recruit.
That's right.
But he ended up being a really, really good player.